Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you. You'll never walk alone. That's kind of what that's about. I love spiritual community. I grew up in a little country Methodist church, and my mom would sneak me down to the Pentecostal church whenever she could, down the street where my grandfather and my aunt attended. And recently at convention, I was having a conversation with a colleague, Reverend John McLean, who recently retired from Unity of Nashville, and I haven't spent much time with him. We emailed a few times, but we were at the same little gathering, and I said, "So how's retirement?" He said, "Well, I unretired." I said, "Tell me about that." Well, evidently our denomination has created a program for retired ministers to connect with smaller churches that don't have the resources to hire a full-time minister, and he was doing that. And what he told me was this. This is reason I'm sharing this story with you, and it rang true for me. He said, I've discovered that I still want to have spiritual community as the organizing principle I build my life around. And I thought, wow, I've been thinking about that ever since. And that's what I do. That's why I think, well, I'm called to do this work, and I've got hopefully some skills and talents for it. But beneath that is my desire to continue to build my life around this concept of spiritual community. I build my week around it. Last week I had 2 Sundays off before that because of my travel, and I was like bouncing off the ceiling. I was so happy to be back here with you guys. I've calmed down a little bit, but I'm still happy to be here with you, okay? There's something about gathering, not just on Sunday, but even the work we do in the office during the week. It's good and wonderful work, but even if I didn't get paid, I love this idea of building my life around a connection with other people who are similarly looking at the world similarly, who are also seeing this oneness, that beneath all of the distractions and divisions, there is God present and powerful and available. So it means a lot to me. So I'm not just speaking of something that I studied and giving you a book report. This is something that is really central in my life, and I'm deeply grateful for. So I feel like I got something to say about it. And I've also been in church for most of my 57 years. I grew up, we were there Sunday morning with Sunday school and then the service, because here now the kids get to go while we're over here, they're doing their own thing, but we didn't. We went to church and we had to sit in the boring part too. And then we went back to church Sunday night. And then we went back to church Wednesday night. That's how I grew up. And then, of course, revival. No matter which church was having a revival in the summer, we all went every night during the week when that happened. And then, did a lot of church. Kind of let it go for a while, and then I was minding my own business, singing in a bar in Dallas. And somebody comes in and asks me to come sing at their church. And it's like, what kind of a minister goes to a gay bar in Dallas, Texas, trying to find a musician for their church? Maybe I found my new church. And lo and behold, it was. I was part of that community for 17 years, Center for Spiritual Living in Dallas. And then after I graduated from ministerial school, I worked at CSL Reno for 2 years. And then Reverend Howard Caesar said, "Come here." He invited me to come here as a guest singer one Sunday, and then went to dinner or lunch with he and Diane after, and he said, "Well, we'd like to make a place for you here too. If you ever feel like that, we'd like to have you come work with us." And I said, "No, thank you." I did. I really did. I'd only been at my church in Reno for a year. It just didn't seem like the right thing, but then it stayed with me, and eventually I called Howard back, and I said, "Is that job still open you talked about?" And I've been here now 12 years. I know. I feel like the new kid too. Yeah. And this community, y'all are a little different than that little country Methodist church I grew up in. And you're a little different from that church in Dallas that hired me from the bar. And you're a little different from that church in Reno I worked for 2 years. Matter of fact, all those communities have their own flavor and personality and emphasis in what they teach and what they offer. But you're mine. You're mine. And I don't mean that possessively. I mean that, well, okay. Stop correcting me over there. I don't mean like I own you. I mean, I'm a part of you. Like, this isn't just my job. I'm not just your leader. You're my community. You're the place where I go to when I need someone to talk about, when I'm hurting, when I'm walking through, when you walk through a storm, hold your head up high. Man, I use you. I need spiritual community. I want to build my life around it. I want to continue to do that. So how do you do that? We live in divided and isolated times in our culture. Our Surgeon General of the United States of America has declared a new epidemic, the epidemic of loneliness, particularly since COVID. And because of the advent of electronics, you don't have to leave your house anymore, do you? You can go on the app and they'll bring you groceries and all your entertainment and all of the multiple streaming platforms that you're paying for but not watching. They're all there, and you can do online meetings, and I guess you could date online. I don't know. I mean, you meet people online. They haven't worked all that out yet, but recently, last year sometime, I was at Hobby Airport. And I had one of those moments where I just woke up and saw what's been in front of me, and I haven't really seen it. But I looked around from my phone, and every person I saw with their suitcase, people in their 80s, married couples sitting next to each other, both of them looking at their own phone, 12-year-olds on their iPads. When did that happen? You know, they used to have magazines in the doctor's waiting office. So I guess you did that there, but I guess we would just sit, but we don't just sit anymore, do we? We immediately got our devices and we become isolated. I'm looking at my thing. I'm not going to get rid of my iPhone. But I'm aware that there is a greater tendency, even for me, someone who loves being a part of a spiritual community, who is a huge extrovert, who loves people. I still am, I get the opportunity to isolate more and more easily. And I know it's not healthy for my soul. So what this whole month we're doing this series is called How to Spirituality. Not just like a concept or a philosophical approach, but how do we nuts and bolts it? How do we create this or make this thing happen? Last week we talked about how do we pray and meditate. Next week I'm going to be talking about how to navigate difficult times in our lives. But today I'm talking about how to create spiritual community. Because it's great that it's out there and it's wonderful, but it doesn't happen to you unless you step into it in some way. Remember last week, I don't assume that you come every week or hear my talks every week, but I like it if you do. But I talked about the woman who after years, she realized, that she's been looking for a place to set her coffee where she liked to sit in the morning, and then what was she going to, there was a table over there collecting dust, she didn't have any love for it. It's like, oh, I could move that over here. Problem solved. That was like profound, and I've done that. Where I have all the solutions to my problems, but I haven't put it together. I haven't taken the steps. I haven't moved into intention and action and choice to make it happen. And that's what this series is about. How can we use the resources already available to make choices and make decisions and take actions to create the container to connect to our true life, the life of spirit. And last week I shared with you that Michael Singer, the author of The Untethered Soul, he says really the definition of spirituality is just getting to I'm okay. Just getting to I'm okay. And we use these practices of prayer and meditation so that we can disconnect from the false identities of lack and limitation and disease. We get to use this wonderful thing called spiritual community to disconnect from the false identity of nobody loves me, I'm all alone in this world. And we get to create this experience of love and belonging and connection. And man, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here because I wouldn't have this job if I didn't believe in it, but I also wouldn't be on the planet, I think, with what I've walked through without having people who need people. Are the luckiest people in the world. We're children needing other children. And yet, here's where I'm doing this as a bit, so hold on. But I got to get the lyrics. Yet letting the grown-up pride hide all the need inside, acting more like children than children. There's some spiritual truth in that Barbra Streisand song. We are children, needing other children, yet letting the grown-up pride hide all the need inside, acting more like children than children. Why do we hide that we need other people? Why do we do that? I love that you didn't think that was a rhetorical question. I love that. We're having interactive church. I love it. I do. Fear. That's it. You got it. Fear of getting hurt, of being rejected again. All of us have been traumatized in the area of relationships because we all have a family. That's it. And so we all, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family of origin. We get re-traumatized. Because people are not always great. You know, people are flawed and faulted and limited, and they make big mistakes. Parents make mistakes. Children make mistakes. And things can get hurt. And so we have this, I've shared it last week too, this childhood conditioning, the way we're seeing the world through those child hurts changes us, and we shut down and we protect and we become guarded and armored, so we hide what we truly need and who we truly are so we're safe. It's normal, it's what people do, but it's not healthy and it's not true, and it's not the way to create a spiritual community. It's not the way to create a life of connection and love. It's not the way to do it. Brene Brown, love Dr. Brene Brown, she talks about this. What is it that keeps us? We talked about fear, hiding the need inside, but shame. Shame is a huge thing that keeps us armored up and protected. And she says everyone has shame. She's a shame researcher. What a fun job that is. Everyone has it, and she said the less willing you are to talk about it, the more you have. What is the antidote to shame? Well, you'd think it'd be pride, confidence, strong abilities. It's not. The antidote to shame, according to her research, watch the TED Talks if you haven't, vulnerability, laying down the armor, letting people see your need, being honest about it. I have not been hiding or secretive around my recovery path. It's been huge. I found New Thought theology and Centers for Spiritual Living, and this teaching, I found it in the same year that I found recovery. And I have always walked both of those paths. And in recovery, it's incredible that people who are hopeless addicts and alcoholics and just their lives are just, I can't say that word on stage, a show. My life was a show like that. Hopeless. And yet, it started with Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob, two hopeless alcoholics, sharing their story and their experience, strength, and hope with each other, and they found that they were able to stay sober Telling the truth about this horrible thing called addiction opened the door to something. Made the space for this really, I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but I was at the Texas State Fair in Dallas one time, and at one, I love doing the junk food there sometimes, and they've fried everything, and I went up to a place, it was a barbecue place I'd been told about by the food writer of the Dallas Morning News, and she got to go try this, and I went over there, and I saw they had ostrich on a stick. And I said, "Is that really ostrich?" She said, "I have no idea." And I kind of giggled, and she said, "Tell the truth and shame the devil." And I'd never heard that phrase. But I love it. We don't teach an actual devil in Unity, but you get the idea. It's like, tell the truth. Just that there's no place for that hiding to live. If you just tell the truth of what's really going on. Different than telling the truth of our spiritual reality, telling the truth of our human experience is necessary to get to the truth of our spiritual reality. And so if we're going to create our own spiritual community, and this is a spiritual community, some people like the word church, some people don't, but we all agree that we are a spiritual community. It can be your spiritual community if you need one, but it doesn't have to be. But I just encourage you to create a circle of friends or a place where you can go, where you can be with people who agree with you on the nature of reality being spiritual. And this is a great one. But guess what? We still have people here. I know. We're not always great. We struggle. We mess up. You know, humans, man, we can create symphonies and we can create holocausts. We have access, and last week we talked about the power that we have access to through our prayer and meditation. God is, I am. We can use the spiritual power available to us for good or ill. We have the choice, and people do both. I do both. When I forget the truth of my spiritual reality, I can use my spiritual truth of intention and action in ways that are destructive of my relationships, of my own physical well-being. I can do that. So what does that have to do with spiritual community? It sounds like you're not selling it very well, Reverend Michael. Got all those flawed people up in that place. Because the magic happens. I don't know exactly how. The same way it happens in 12-step circles is when people get together and start telling the truth about what's going on in their life. It's like this magic pixie dust lands on them. And there's this thing called hope begins to spring. And then people share what's going on in their lives, and we want to encourage them. We begin to give of ourselves to them in support and love, and then they reciprocate. And before you know it, it's better. There's nothing in our teachings that says we have to do it with other people. But what we have been shown in practice is that it works better if we do this together. Bring ourselves, all that we are and all that we're not, and begin to take up these practices and create a life. Then spiritual community is powerful. This is another... not a poem by Hafez, the great mystic from Sufism, but one inspired by his writing, by Daniel Ladinsky. Love sometimes wants to reach out and manhandle us, break all of our teacup talk of God. If you had the courage and could give the beloved his choice, some nights he would just drag you around the room by your hair, ripping from your grip all those toys of the world that bring you no joy. Love sometimes gets tired of speaking sweetly and wants to rip to shreds your erroneous notions of truth that make you fight within yourself, dear one, and with others, causing the world to weep on too many fine days. Yes, God wants to manhandle us, lock us inside a tiny room with himself and practice his drop kick. The beloved sometimes wants to do us a great favor, hold us upside down and shake us until all the nonsense falls out. But when we hear that God is in such a playful, drunken mood, most everyone I know quickly packs their bags and hightails it out of town. Isn't that great? In order to build true spiritual community, we have to be shaken a little bit. We have to let go of I've been aware so much of our political division and the things that are going on in the culture is because everybody is so convinced they're right, that my perspective is the only correct one. That hard-edged way of being in the world will not serve you, and it will not allow you to form true spiritual community. You must soften at the edges. You must begin to let Spirit shake you up a little bit. Don't be afraid of not having all the answers. Somebody once, who was a part of this community, said, I would rather go to a church that didn't have all the answers than go to a church where I couldn't question the answers they give me. We're not going to tell you the rules and we're going to trust you to figure it out. We're going to offer some teachings, some philosophies. But if you don't like what we're saying, put it on the back burner. Maybe it's not for you. But what we try to do is to create a container for spiritual exploration and for spiritual deepening. But you got to let yourself be shaken out of your rightness and I got this whole thing figured out. Do you? How's that working? Channel Dr. Phil for a minute. Is he still around? I don't know. How's that working for you? Here's the secret. You're never going to figure it out. Life is too complex, too uncertain. If figuring it out is your strategy to handle life, we'll save a chair for you in some of those 12-step circles. I mean, you definitely have a chair available here. It's not about figuring it out. It's about opening ourselves to a greater reality than my control freak self can handle. Let it be. And the first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to be okay with people. There are two things I suggest you do when you're looking to form a spiritual community. You want to look for similarities. People that agree with you about some things. You want to have people who have a similar way of being in the world around some things. And yet, wouldn't it be boring if we all thought the same thing about everything? So in the 12 steps, it's often said to look for the similarities when people are sharing their experience, because you can get in there. It's like, I'm not like that. I never did that. But that actually separates you from the hope. And if you can just look for this, feel the similarities. Their stories may be different. And as you're meeting people here, they may not be like you in some ways, but there are threads of similar experience and ways of understanding that will begin to sing to you back a little bit. You're like, oh yeah, those might be my people. And what I also encourage you to do is be okay with the differences. Because our differences really are a blessing. Sometimes they rub like sandpaper. They do. The people are, really? You still think that? You voted for who? It may rub us wrong. But you know what sandpaper does? It smooths it. It's useful. Lisa Nichols said everything comes into our life as a gift, but some gifts are wrapped in sandpaper. And people are like that too. Similarities and differences, they all are going to help us become more of who we need to be. And the last thing I want to say about this whole spiritual community thing, you got to give to get. There is something in us that, there's something in me that sometimes just wants to find whatever I'm looking for just perfectly formed and just like in a capsule form I could just swallow it. I talked about, I'd like to do the one perfect push-up and never have to do another the rest of my life. Practice is boring. I just want the pill. What I have found with spiritual community, that those in this community, you, my community, and other communities I've been a part of, the ones who receive the most good, the most support, the most fulfillment in their community experience are the ones who give. Years ago, what a lot of people took this, it was one of the early, or not early, but it was a prosperity class that used to be taught a lot in Unity churches called 4 T's. It was tithing of your time, talent, and treasure. And it seems counterintuitive. How am I going to get more if I give? I won't have it. I gave it. But it doesn't work that way, because what did we talk about last week? God is, I am. I am wholly connected to infinite source, and as I give, I am replenished. And as I give, I receive. Giving and receiving are two sides of the same coin. And if you are holding your good and like this, guess what? There's no place to receive. But if you can begin to give of your time, your talent, your attention, your intention, your friendship, if you can begin to give, look what you have now, an open hand, ready to receive the good that is given to you as well. Giving and receiving. Jesus talked about this. He talked about, I'll just read it. It's in chapter 15 of John. My iPad is fighting back with me these days. There we go. Starting with verse 9. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. And I have told you this, that your joy may be full, your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. And greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for your friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. Now that phrase, to lay down one's life for another. Now, traditional Christian theology said Jesus was talking about his own sacrifice on the cross. And I'm not going to have that conversation. I'm going to tell you the metaphysics of this idea of laying down your life for another. What it means is to lay your ego aside, to lay your sense of isolation and separateness and aloofness and difference aside and step back into the flow of oneness. That giving and receiving of divine love, recognizing that every person you see is an expression of God's love and worthy of my love. Everyone you see is a child of God. To lay down your life for another is to destroy the walls of separation in your mind. To lay that down and to live in this space of connection and common love and intention. Our being statement here at Unity says we live from our oneness with God and each other, experiencing abundance and connection with all life. If you don't want to live that way, don't go to Unity. But if you want to live that way, that's what our name means. The temptation to isolation and judgment of others and disconnection, it's strong in this material world. The how-to create spiritual community is to lay that down. Let us see the need that you share. Be open and available to give and receive the gift that you are. And watch what happens. We won't be perfect because we're still people. But we are people here who have committed to a life of spiritual growth and healing. I want to end by sharing with you an email that I got from one of our members, and I'm going to protect their name. But this is really powerful for me. When I first found Unity, I received confirmation of what I'd been hoping was true, that I was worthy, that joy was my birthright, and that people are good. But there were still things in me that needed to be named and brought to light: shame, unforgiveness, regret, just to name a few. These teachings and this community have given me the strength to face these things as they arise. And so now, as we are witnessing acts of violence and hatred in the world, I am able to recognize them for the call to love that they really are. All the ways which we have not dealt directly and honestly with our humanity are demanding our attention now. Yesterday, I said that I got the message to be open. And I know that It doesn't mean we'll see what happens kind of open. It was a meet every moment with a fierce love kind of open. And this is how I intend to live that idea, and that we are all just walking each other home. To know that there is no such thing as their pain or their issues of separation. There is only human pain caused by a false idea of separation. And I don't know if I can stay open and awake in every moment that is to come, probably not. But I do know that this is the power of the spiritual community, that we help each other stay awake when the temptation to go back to sleep becomes too great. And this person who walked in here, maybe like you, alone and never been to a Unity Church a few years ago, felt a spark of hope that maybe this would be the place where she would begin to live this life of oneness. And I just have to tell you, they're doing it in a big way, and it inspires me. I used to stand up here and cry and ask you to please be part of my church. I mean, I could do that. But I will stand here with my heart wide open to you. I will let you see the need inside me, that I need you, and I know that you need me. And if you have the desire to be in a community that will help you stay awake in a world that wants us to go to sleep, come do this with me. Would you pray with me now? Begin this prayer by remembering what we talked about last week, that God is not a God of names, but God of infinity, God of infinite love and infinite power, infinite intelligence, infinite peace and joy and light. This is the great reality. This is what is real. Beyond all material form and circumstance and condition, there is this one life, and I call it God. It's the biggest word I know. And it loves itself into creation, giving of its own substance and source into infinite forms, people, planets, whales, and babies. Oh, and I am an expression of this love of God. And as everyone within the sound of my voice, we are all expressions of this one power and presence and love. So knowing this oneness, living from this oneness, speaking from this oneness, I now declare my word that those who are seeking to build community into their lives as a way of staying awake, as a way of growing and healing and evolving into a higher consciousness of love and being on the planet, I declare that intention and desire for community is met. That they are able to find their tribe, their people, their circle where they can stand and be seen, to drop the armor, to be available, to be known, and to know and love the others that are doing the same. I'm so grateful for this idea called spiritual community and how powerful it's been in my life and the life of billions of people. And I am grateful for this community, that it has at its core this intention to keep the doors open, to hold the space and circle open for anyone who would come to do this work of transformation and healing, to be the beacon of hope for our world now. Thank you, God, for Unity of Houston. Thank you, God, for giving me a place to stand and share and lead and receive and give in this wonderful community. May we be blessed in this work we do together now. Thank you, God. So it is. Amen. You know I mean it. I don't just stand up here and say it. If no one has told you today that they love you, I love you. Thank you for being a part of my community. Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook, or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.